What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin and a new friend, guest on the show, Brooks Austin from Dawgs Daily, the SI, Dawgs Daily, SI guy for the Georgia football team. I'm getting tongue-tied with the intros here, but you are the guy to talk to when it comes to Ben Cleveland. Brooks, thanks for coming on the show, man.
No doubt, man. As someone who has to do cold opens like this on a regular basis, I felt every bit of that tongue-tied. Cold opens are the worst. I wish we could just start a record halfway through because the natural flow in conversation leads off best. But yeah, cold opens are not the one. But no, man, I'm happy to be here. First time on Baltimore Airways, so I appreciate you guys for having me. Yeah,
absolutely. And one other thing really quickly before we get into Ben Cleveland, we talked about this off air, but you got to tell our listeners where you get the name from, man.
Yeah, so Brooks Austin, obviously, Brooks being my first name. Everyone always thinks Austin's my first name, but Pops, no, my dad was a huge Brooks Robinson fan. Really loved the way, obviously, he played defense. And, before it was Brett Murphy and all the guys here in the Atlanta area at third base, it was Brooks Robinson. So my mom loved the name. And that's what I got stuck with. Instead of Blake, like my brother, I got Brooks, which nobody really ever knows about. Obviously, the Baltimore area, you guys know all about 14-time Gold Glover. So super proud to carry the name. And obviously one of my favorite guys growing up, even though I obviously didn't watch him play. He was long gone out of the career before I was even a thought. So.
One of the true nicest guys in all of sports. It doesn't get any better of a person than Brooks Robinson. So, and also a pretty darn cool name. And that's coming from a guy whose name is Glenn. So I'm envious of name. It's a family name. So, shout out to my pop, but Glenn isn't necessarily the coolest name when it's read off by, whoever. But anyway,
I get a lot of Brooke though. You're not getting someone confusing your name for a girl, so that's okay. That's okay. The whole life your name's being flip flop backwards, always getting called Brooke. People having real funky questions about where the apostrophe goes if you were so happen to own something. Yeah, it's not all glorified. I mean, there is a Hall of Famer you're named after, but it's not that great. I mean, Glenn's cool too. I mean,
thanks, bro.
Hey, you got two ends, man. That's unique.
That's two ends, not one end. That's.
One end, you'd be a serial killer, right? You got two ends.
The only more extra would be GLYNN, but instead you're basic, Glenn, with two ends.
With a twist. That's right.
Yeah.
Got some flavor on the top.
Well, thanks again for coming on with us, Brooks. And we got to lead off with, because Ben Cleveland has a bit of a legend behind him as he comes to Baltimore. So we had to ask, do you have any cool or crazy stories that you can share with us about the newest Raven, Ben Cleveland?
So, I mean, a lot of the stories revolve around the weight room, right? Everybody knows how strong he was in that weight room. Pretty big psycho. In terms of lifting the weights, wakes up every morning, eats a bowl of 45-pound plates with his whole milk. But no, I mean, everyone's heard the squirrel story. If you had it when he was 14 years old, he played hooky from school, was pretending to be sick, got hungry. There was no food around the house. Went outside, took his 22, shot a couple squirrels, grilled them up on the outdoor grill, left the skins on the front porch. I mean, this is as hick gets in Georgia. And he just so happens to be a mountain man. I mean, you guys know how big he is. He's 6'6", 350. But no, the story that I always love, and I've got pictures of it. I put up on my Twitter before. This dude played baseball in high school. I mean, and all the way through high school at 6'6", at 330 pounds. So not the most fluid of movers in terms of swinging a baseball bat, but I mean, a modern day cartoon character. He looked like a cheat code at high school. Sporting events in general. But no, the thing I always remember Ben for is just that country, good old boy type environment. That's what he is. I mean, he is the epitome of a modern day, mountain man. That's what it always was. Georgia had a really, really tough time keeping him in the classroom and out of the woods. This guy loves to hunt. That's what he does. So no, as long as there's good hunting in the Baltimore area, as long as he's an hour and a half from the opportunity to shoot a deer, he's going to be all right. And, as long as he can, get a line out there and reel in some bass, he's going to be okay. and he loves to play football. That's what it's all about for him.
Man, that's awesome. That's so cool. I think he'll end up being good buddies with Bradley Bozeman as a, an Alabama guy. I know he himself is known to get out there and do some of the same stuff. But another question I have for you about Ben is, and we usually start off all these calls this way. The Ravens look at the man just as much, if not more, than the player. Mm-hmm. So what type of teammate and guy, from a personality standpoint, are the Ravens getting?
I mean, he's been around the Georgia program for an eternity, it feels like. You won't find anyone around the program that's ever said anything bad about him. One of the guys that really sticks up for his teammates, if he feels like one of his guys is maybe getting misused or mistreated, whether it be he had no fear in college, not necessarily confronting a coach, but just saying, hey, coach, I would rather you not talk to him like that. Let's talk to him in a different manner. As he got older, he not only became a smarter football player, but I think he became a better leader in that Georgia program. Again, it was never going to be about Ben Cleveland, the scholar athlete. This was a guy that loved to play football, loves to hunt and fish, and loves his teammates. Again, you won't find anybody that's not a glaring review. And as you know, you guys, you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. Baltimore does as good a job, if not the best job in the league in terms of background checking all these guys and checking all of the character evals on a guy like Ben. And he checks all those boxes, no doubt about that.
That's exciting.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Now, the Ravens' biggest offseason addition from a free agency standpoint was bringing in right guard Kevin Zeitler. And so it looks like the quickest way to the field for Ben Cleveland might be switching to left guard. So what do you think about the idea of Ben Cleveland switching sides, and are you confident he could make that switch quickly enough to be ready week one?
When we talk about switching from right tackle to left tackle, that's a big question mark for me. But in terms of flip-flopping interior, we're really talking about putting a different hand down. Okay. Your inside combos changed just a little bit. Your viewpoint of your general viewpoint of the game changes a little bit, but athletically, there are no different skill sets or different requirements for a right guard versus a left guard. I will say that Ben's played a majority of his snaps, like the overwhelming majority of his snaps, even dating back to 2017 when he started cracking the lineup on that national championship run. They came at right guard. So it's what he's comfortable with, but you give a guy a full offseason to just learn the other side. And this is an above average athlete for somebody that's this big, and he's really, really smart. If you watch him on tape, towards the end of his career, he was sniffing out slants and stunts faster than anybody on that Georgia offensive line. And if you really dig deep into the tape, you'll find him. He was overtaking the center in terms of calling protections and calling run schemes and the point identification of the run game. So a really smart football player, an above average athlete. I don't have any questions about him, moving over to left tackle or left guard, especially if we're talking about it meaning playing time, right? It's nothing that this young man can't figure out, I don't believe. He played left tackle in high school, so he's got a sense of comfort over there, even if it was 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years. I don't know how long he's been in college. He's been there forever. I'm just kidding. It was 6 years.
That's awesome. So as a follow-up to that, maybe if you could speak more to the type, if you had to give a scout eval on his game, the type of blocker that we're getting. We had some issues last year, especially in the playoffs with protecting Lamar Jackson. A lot of moments where Lamar didn't quite feel comfortable when you could notice it. And obviously that was a big reason why we went out and signed Zeitler. Another reason why we went out and got Ben Cleveland, who I considered, Glenn and I both, is our favorite pick of the entire draft. But if you had to describe his style as a pass blocker and even as a run blocker, how would you do that?
Well, you're in luck, guys, because that's kind of my bag. I consider myself the film guy in the Georgia area. That's what I do, specifically offensive line. It's what I played in college, so it's my home base. In terms of an eval for Ben, I think he's a perfect scheme fit for what Baltimore does because he's what I consider a linear athlete, meaning he is made and built to go forwards and backwards. If your scheme is like San Francisco, where you're running a whole bunch of outside zone, where you're really stretching, you got to have athletes at the position, very horizontal athletes. Ben's not your guy. But what Baltimore does in terms of the old cliche of smash mouth football, a lot of play action, quick game type stuff like that, he's going to be able to hold in there. And he's a mass mover. He's going to uproot people and move them off the line of scrimmage in the run game. And in the pass game, he's got such an extremely strong anchor. When he gets his feet set in the ground, it's over with. He has a tendency every once in a while to get a little bit lazy with his footwork, and he'll get, an edge captured on him every once in a while. Guys will turn the corner on him, despite how big he is. So if he can be a lot more consistent down in and down out, there's no reason I don't see this guy starting in the NFL for quite a while. The only problem he had in college, and again, this is the full depth of the scouting eval, I mean, he did have some injury. He had the injury bug a little bit in college. He broke his femur, I believe, his freshman year at Georgia. So there is a little bit of injury history there. But again, it's a big, strong, tough dude. And he played, the overwhelming majority of his college career. He has a lot of college football up underneath his belt. The best example or the best definition of I can put for Ben Cleveland is those two words: mass mover. He is going to move you against your will. That's what he does.
Nice.
Yeah, I like hearing that. Now, were you surprised to see him last till the third round? I mean, it sounds like a guy you're really high on. Why did he take until the third round before getting selected?
I think it was a lot of that scheme fit. I mean, Baltimore is one of the very few teams in the league nowadays that isn't doing a whole lot of stretch zone, isn't doing a whole lot of outside zone. If they're getting outside of the pocket or getting onto the edges of the defense, they don't want offensive linemen mucking it up. They want Lamar Jackson one-on-one in the alley with an alley defender. They don't want big guys out there and having the quarterback try to find an alley like they do at San Francisco, like they do at programs like that run that heavy stretch zone. Atlanta, prior to, under the Sarkisian days and whatnot, that was an offensive system that was prone to athletes. Whereas with Ben, I mean, it's a very specific system. It's you guys in Baltimore. It's Atlanta now under Arthur Smith, the former Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator. Program Cleveland would have been a great opportunity for Ben as well. These very downhill run heavy offenses, it was a very scheme specific issue. And then you also have to take into account that he is an older player, right? I mean, it is a ceiling versus floor discussion in every single one of these war rooms in the NFL. It's, hey, this guy might not be as good right now, but 5 years from now, he might be a Pro Bowler, whereas Ben Cleveland is just another guy that's in the starting rotation. So I think that's what you got with a lot of scouting departments and when they dig up the injury history. I mean, when you have a guy that doesn't exactly have a clean bill of health, it's hard to say he's a first-round offensive lineman, despite how immensely talented and physically gifted a guy like Cleveland is. And then you combine that with a scheme-specific athlete, and you knock more suitors off the board. And then you got a team like Baltimore that's sitting there in the third round. They're like, well, of course we're taking Ben Cleveland. Thank you for falling to us. But it makes sense as to why he did. Going into it, I projected him in that, mid to late third round, early fourth round type of atmosphere for a guy like Ben.
Yeah, it was really interesting because as soon as we drafted him, Glenn and I started doing some research, and one of the guys we have on the show often is Jason Pruitt from DraftPlex. He's one of the most accurate drafters in the country, and he had him rated, if I'm not mistaken, Glenn, as the second or third
behind Vera Tucker. And I'm blanking on the other guy he had above him, but he had him as the third guard in the entire draft.
The third guard is still historically it's still middle of the second round.
Right.
Yeah.
So, he didn't go far from your buddy's projection right there. I mean, Solomon McKinley, I think last year out of Georgia down to Miami, started as a rookie. He was a fourth round draft pick, and I think he was like the sixth or seventh guard off the board. So there's not a whole lot of them that fly off the board early. Especially this year, I didn't think it was an immensely talented offensive line class. I know there were some tackles in there, but even those guys, nobody was willing to just absolutely say, oh, yeah, this dude's a 12-year starter, 5-time All-Pro. I had those opinions about Penei Sewell, but my opinion doesn't really matter.
So actually, I'm gonna ask you to dig into your knowledge base here. So I'm sure you've watched some. Obviously, you've watched tape on Ben Cleveland, but the guys that he will be competing with at that position. It'll be him, Ben Bredesen. I don't know if you've seen any tape on him from in college in Michigan. And then also Ben Powers, of course, out of Oklahoma. But if you had to, even not knowing those guys, knowing what you know about Ben Cleveland, do you feel confident in saying that he's most likely going to win this job based on what you know about him? Or do you see him as more of a guy that maybe could come in, red shirt, not literally, but kind of red shirt, and then develop into that role?
And you already said it. I don't know much about the roster consistency of what's going on in Baltimore, but I do know a little bit about Ben, a lot about Ben. And what I'll tell you is he's an extremely smart football player. So when it comes to rookie offensive linemen, you got to worry about two things, in my opinion. A, can they pick up the playbook? That's not going to be a problem. B, can they pick up the speed of the game? Because there is obviously a transition from college to pro. Well, he played 5, solid years in SEC football going against, the top of the line week in and week out. So in terms of the speed of the play or speed of the game, I think he's going to be up to speed there as well. So the transition period and the maturation period is going to be much, much smoother and much quicker for an athlete like this. That again, he's physically peaked. You're not going to have to sit there and say, well, we got to throw 10 pounds on him like you might have some rookies. Or, well, we got to get his play strength stronger like you might have to with some rookies. Or, hey, well, he's got to spend another 6 months in the playbook like you might have to with some rookies. So in that sense, yeah, he is ready to play in the NFL. I'm not going to sit here and BS you about your own roster. I don't know about your roster. So, yeah, it's hard to tell, but you'll find out pretty quickly. Solomon, the only example I got for you is Solomon McKinley. He was a 4th-round draft pick, like I said, last year in Miami, and within a week, it was like, yeah, he's taking reps with the one because he's our guy. It doesn't take long. When a guy like this dominates physically, even in limited OTAs or whatever Baltimore's having, because I know there's some boycotts going around in the NFL. But whenever he gets the pads on, it's going to be noticeable that he's bona fide. The only problem I've got is, hey, does he get a little bit over his skis in pass protection because he's no longer going up against just another guy in the SEC. He's going up against some studs weekend or day in and day out in practice. So
yeah, especially in the North. You got TJ Watt, you got Myles Garrett, and now Jadeveon Clowney, and amongst others.
And those are all athletes that I feel like if you got them in, because that's what the NFL is nowadays in terms of pass rush. They're trying to get one-on-one matchups. They're trying to set the defensive front to get the matchup that they want. And all of those guys you just mentioned will 100% be able to athletically overwhelm a guy like Cleveland in a pass rushing situation. If they get him in a one-on-one, if he's got any type of confined space, if there's not a two-way go, then you're just going to run into an oak tree and he's going to lock you up and it's going to be over with. So that's the one concern in the passing game that I would have. And in terms of the running game, he's not been great on the second level. But again, you run a system there at Baltimore that's primarily focused with moving the front 4. Or moving the front 3, whatever it is. Reset the line of scrimmage. That's what y'all do. That's what this guy does. So a road grader, mass mover. Those are the cliche scouting terms for you.
Well, I'm excited to see him versus Brandon Williams in those camp battles. Two guys that, you talk about what is an unstoppable force and an immovable object. Them two running into each other. I would love to be close to hear what that sounds like. But last question for you, Brooks. With Alejandro Villanueva coming from Pittsburgh to play right tackle, presumably for Baltimore, and obviously Zeitler coming in to play right guard, there's a lot of competition, like Jimmy mentioned, at left guard. And let's say, for instance, Tyree Phillips, wins that left guard spot. Now, something happens to Villanueva. He goes down at right tackle. Any chance?
If you're going to ask me if he can play tackle, no
chance.
Yeah, because we've heard
Absolutely
that from some
not.
people saying that he could come and compete, and we didn't think so either.
I don't mean to discredit anybody like that, but I've been watching these dudes Georgia fans try to do the same thing, and I'm like, y'all don't understand. And what's really tossing people off is that box score scouting, where they look at the pro day and they're like, oh, well, he ran an unofficial 4.85 40. He must be a really good athlete, and he is in a straight line capacity. But in turn, go watch him on screen passes at Georgia, and that'll tell you exactly what kind of open space athlete he is if you leave him out there on an island. I'm concerned about him getting athletically overwhelmed at guard on an island, let alone tackle. That's somebody that's, and again, I don't know who it is, but yeah, that's somebody that's probably doesn't know offensive line play. This is not a tackle ever.
We're certainly going to trust the integrity of your sources and you, obviously, and you watching it over some other people. But I'm glad you put that to rest because it's pretty rare anyway to see a guard in college then bounce out to tackle. Yeah. Usually they get bumped into guard because of the lack of athleticism.
And he doesn't I know he's 6'6", but he doesn't have incredible arm length either. Right. Like he's not a 3-inch arm guy. I think he's like 31 5/8 or something like that. Almost shockingly short arms for a guy that's this broad. No, he's a guard for the rest of eternity. He was a guard he was a tackle in high school. He stepped on campus at Georgia, and it's like, all right, that was fun. Let's kick you into guard. And he didn't leave. He never took a snap at tackle throughout his 5 years at Georgia. So I don't expect it now to be happening on the next level. You don't go from guard to tackle. You go from tackle to guard from college to the NFL.
Right. Yeah, 100%. We agree with you there. I'm glad you put that one to bed with some credibility behind it. Say it with your chest, Brooks. We like it a lot. That was awesome. Thanks for your time this evening. We're really excited. You got us excited about Ben Cleveland. I think even more excited, hopefully our fans as well. Why don't you let the folks know where they can find all the stuff that you're working on?
Yeah, if for some reason there's a crossover in fan bases, if you're a Baltimore Raven fan and a Georgia Bulldog fan, just check me out at Brooks Austin SI. We do a bunch of film work, man. So if you just want to learn a little bit about football, we do all that good stuff. It is mostly Georgia specific, so apologies for that. But I appreciate you guys for having me on. Maybe let's check back after the rookie year. We'll see what goes on. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too, guys.